Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. My guest today is Carl Archer. He is an elder law attorney, but he's here to talk about his weight loss journey, which includes dieting, surgery, and everything involved in that process. He has lost how much weight, Carl?
285 pounds.
Wow. So welcome, Carl.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you're here to talk about this because for some people it's a very sensitive subject, and the reality is most of the population struggles with some weight, being overweight.
Sure.
So let's talk about, were you always a chubby kid, or?
Well, sure, but I didn't get the surgery because I was chubby, right? I mean, you said people, it's kind of endemic. People struggle with their weight, fine. But I mean, that really wasn't the issue for me. It went well beyond that. But, the story I like to tell, I've been asked about this once or twice over the last couple of years. And the story I like to tell is the first time that I went to go see a nutritionist in connection with the surgery, she said to me, well, how long have you been heavy? And I thought about it for a minute and I went, fetus? Like a long time.
Yes.
I was a 9-pound baby. I was a big boy, But again, there are a lot of babies that are born a little big and they don't all get weight loss surgery. So.
Yeah. So, again, the reason I talk about it as there are a lot of implications for being overweight. So we're going to talk about the surgery and the health issues and whatever. But growing up being overweight, I mean, were you teased, bullied? Were you very overweight? Was it a slow progression?
Well, okay. So there's a lot there. I was always a big kid. I don't know. I mean, listen, it really accelerated through college and into law school, kind of into my 20s and kind of through that way. All right, but I was always big. I always had quite a bit of weight to lose. I mean, only recently have I kind of looked at things and said, oh, I really don't have 50 pounds to lose or 100 pounds to lose. I mean, that's a fairly recent phenomenon for me. And, as far as dealing with other kids and other people and whatever else, when you've been heavy or when you've had something about you your entire life, oftentimes you forget that you are, right? And so if somebody says, oh, look, the fat kid or whatever, kind of like, all right, that's all you got. Like, come on, let's come up with something interesting here. It's not as though these things didn't hold me back in one form or fashion. I'm sure that there were people that prejudged me based on the way I looked or the way that I appeared, or it's difficult if they're like, oh well, let's walk to some place that's uphill half a mile away. Well, that might be a little bit difficult depending on your health conditions or whatever else. But so there were those things that were kind of an issue.
What about dating?
For me, the situation was a little bit different because I mean it's not as though I was much of a dater. I met my wife at the time when I was 20, and we were together kind of continuously since then. But it was I was never the sort of person that was inclined to play the field. I'm not sure that decision was entirely based on my inclination, and it might have been based on the fact that my weight would have been off-putting to somebody, but I'm speculating. I really don't know.
So it wasn't it doesn't sound to me like it was a huge issue for you.
Well, I think that's fair. Part of it is that it is my personality that I have a personality where my self-esteem is not really at issue.
Wow. We need the formula for that.
Well, listen, I'm sure I have emotional baggage. I know I do. My therapist tells me so. But, my self-esteem, listen, I have an idea of who I am and what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And, if somebody is going to try and take me down for my weight or for something like that, listen, that is as much as anything else about them as it is about me, and I kind of go on and do what I do. And again, when you've been heavy your entire life, you don't really think about it as, well, they're doing this because of my weight. Because again, that's like me saying, well, they're doing it because of the color of my eyes. So the color of my eyes hasn't drastically changed since I was a little kid. So I really wouldn't think about that as the first problem. It would be, did I walk in and there was something green in my teeth? Well, all right, that might be more of an issue.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
But again, that's me, right?
Right.
I have heard. I can't tell you how many people who have talked about, in support groups and whatever else, who've talked about being bullied or about how their self-esteem is at issue. It's very, very common. It's just not my experience. Wow. My experience is, I was who I was, but I found myself as I got a little older, and I'm not old certainly, but as I got through my 20s and into my 30s, I found that the pool of things that I could do easily was starting to become restricted. And, I was the sort of person who would walk into a room and I wasn't looking up, I was looking at waist level, because I was looking to see where the chairs were that didn't have arms on them, because the ones that did have arms were likely to cut off the circulation to the lower half of my body. Or, I needed to be able to see where the door was, or if I was walking somewhere and, I wanted to get to a place early so I had a parking spot so that my back wouldn't hurt when I walked in. These are the things that now I forget about, because, if I had to park a half a mile away, aside from the fact that maybe it's raining out and I don't want to get wet, but I wouldn't have even thought twice about it. And that's because in my current physical condition, or in somebody's current physical condition, it's not remarkable that they could walk a half a mile. But in my physical condition, it certainly was.
So did anybody in your life say anything to you?
All the time.
Okay.
I heard it all the time. But the thing is, I heard, but there's a difference between hearing and listening, right?
Yes.
And so eventually one has to internalize these things and be ready to go.
And what do you think it was that got you ready?
Well, I was just, to take a phrase, sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? I wasn't chronically ill. I didn't have, for the most part, I didn't have major comorbidities. It wasn't as though I was diabetic or I had a heart issue or, whatever. But again, there's just the pool of things. Somebody says, nobody was asking Carl if they wanted to go out and play if he wanted to go out and play baseball, because Carl, everybody kind of figured Carl can't get up and do anything. Nobody was saying, hey, Carl, you want to go for a walk? Because Carl can't really go for a walk. It was very sedentary, stationary kind of activities. So
you were married. Did you have children?
No.
And did it become problematic in your marriage?
I'm going to lawyer you. What do you mean, it?
The weight.
Well,
because again, couples can argue about, you're not taking care of your health, you're going to die,
Well, sure. But that's only one of the ways that it could be an issue. So it turns out that, when people, generally speaking, have weight loss surgery, it often causes drastic physical changes in those people, right? And so if you have a relationship where one person makes a drastic physical change, it can cause strain on a relationship. And so that's not solely my experience. It is.
I've heard that.
It is very, very common that if there is stress in a relationship, it will be highlighted by a drastic physical change. Because listen, a weight loss surgery is a big physical transformation, and that's what people see and that's what people recognize. The key to making it work is between your ears.
Yes.
And so. And the key to making it work within the dynamic of whatever your family or whatever your relationships are is within the ears of the other people as well.
Yeah.
And so, it's just one of those things where you have to be acutely aware of how those things affect people.
Yeah. And Yes, it's no just, okay, before and after, and nothing in between in terms of the emotional and, yeah.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, you'll see, no doubt, you'll show before and after
Yes.
pictures, but they're devoid of context. I mean, yes, Carl was a lot bigger on the one side, and Carl was a lot less big on the, okay, fine, got it, I understand. But, you know, the mental changes that were necessary. I mean, you know, I mentioned the therapist as a little, you know, again, throwaway joke, but like one of the things that they make you do before you have surgery is they make you see a therapist. And a lot of people go, when they see the therapist, they get the clearance and then they're done with the therapist. I went and I never stopped because I realized there was stuff there. There were issues, you know, and so the therapist has helped me kind of discard kind of the things that I think or the conclusions that I make about myself that are, you know, that don't stand up to scrutiny, okay, or to become a little bit more self-reflective. There's a vernacular that I'm not using because we're on the air, but you know, the idea is that I need to be called on those things sometimes so that I can recognize that about myself and then move on. And so
that's a profound journey, and I want to probably ask you more questions about that, but I want to have time to ask you, at what point did you say, okay, I'm done, and tell us about the surgery?
Okay, so again, I don't know that there was an event or an epiphany or whatever, but again, it was just, there comes a point, and perhaps this is a function of my personality, which is kind of like, all right, this is enough,
yeah,
and go figure it out. And so I scheduled an appointment with the surgeon's office, and there are a great many surgeons that do this. The surgeon that I used was based out of Raritan Bay in Oldbridge. Mm-hmm. Anybody who wants to talk about surgery and can get a hold of me through the contact information that you have, and I will tell them all about the surgeon that I had.
Oh, that's great.
I absolutely adore the surgeon and his practice, and you know, so on. And so they schedule you for an appointment, and you go in and they get you on the scale, and then they talk to you about the range of possible surgeries
and
you could have.
You said before the show that you didn't know your exact weight, but when you look down, the number started with 5.
Yeah, that's the story I always say, is that, you know, people say, well, what was your high weight? I don't know. I mean, you know, when you get to that weight, there are logistical issues involved with using scales, but also, why did I want to go on the scale? Like, I got it. The number was not going to be a good number. You know, it's like showing up to a place every day and having some guy hit you in the head. Like, eventually, you know what's going to happen. It's not pleasant, so you stop doing it. Mm-hmm. All right, so you walk into this. I walk in the surgeon's office, and I get on the scale, and the number starts with a 5. And, you know, for a guy who's 5'8", it's a little pudgy. A little. So, you know, you kind of got to do something about that. My BMI, you know, and you talk about, BMI is an imperfect thing, but it's what the insurance companies use, and it's whatever kind of indication. But, you know, a normal BMI for somebody might be 25. You know, they see somebody's overweight might be as much as 30. Again, these numbers are not perfect, but
right.
Is what it is. My BMI was 74.
Oh, my God.
Okay. I was a big boy. And so the surgeon said to me, well, listen, you know, here's the range of different options. I want to do this surgery, but I can't do this surgery first, because if I do the surgery first, you probably won't make it off the table. So I'm going to do this one first, which is like a piece of it, and then we'll go back and do round 2 in like 6 to 9 months. And that's why, and so that's how I ended up. And again, it's not entirely without precedent, but you know, some people will get one and get it revised later on for various reasons. I got 2 surgeries because I wouldn't have made it past the first one if he didn't do the one he did first. So I had what people will often refer to as a gastric sleeve. The surgeon's term for it is a vertical sleeve gastrectomy.
And what does that do?
So essentially what that involves is they take about somewhere between 60 and 80% of your stomach, usually closer to 80% of the stomach, and they remove it and they stitch the rest of it up, and they, you know, they have a nice little shape for the stomach when they're done, and kind of reconnect everything, and so your stomach ends up being able to hold 2, 3, 4 ounces, and that's what you've got, and that'll stretch out slightly, given over the course of time and whatever, but that's what you're dealing with. And it causes large changes in liquid intake and timing of solids and liquids, and
And they guide you through this?
Oh, that's the part that is really, that's the part that's critical, because it turns out that if you get out of surgery, you get out of the hospital, and you stop at McDonald's on the way home, bad things will happen to you. Shockingly, if you've had major surgery where they've stitched things up on your stomach, and then you start stressing your stomach right away and something ruptures, bad things are going to happen to you. There's a lot of really strong acid in the stomach, and you don't want that in your body if you can get away with it.
Yeah.
So there's the thing about the surgery is, again, the easy part is the surgery. Sounds funny, but it's what it's. No, but it's very true. There is.
That's a one and done, and then you've got a whole lifestyle.
The surgery itself takes 45 minutes or an hour. I mean, it's laparoscopic almost all the time. I have a series of small 1-inch incisions. They heal up nice. You barely. I mean, somebody would have to really look at me in order to see that I had it.
So then, let's talk about the second surgery.
So that's the thing. They prep you before, you have all this diet stuff afterwards, and they kind of want to set you up on a schedule. And the reason for this, of course, is because if they don't do that, then if you don't follow what's going on, you could have the best tool. It's a weight loss tool, just like any kind of one of these programs that I'm not being sponsored by, so I'm not going to mention their name, but any one of these programs that you can use and you lose X number of pounds, or you have some sort of diet plan. Fine. Okay, so let's say I lost 50 pounds before I had the surgery, okay, because they put you on whatever kind of plan, try and do this, try and do that, and try and be compliant with it. Okay. Have the surgery, I lost maybe another 120 pounds, 125. So, I mean, the weight falls off you pretty quick. And again, that's one of the hard parts, is that once you have this surgery, you can lose weight. I don't really care how compliant you are, you can lose weight. Which causes some people not to be compliant, because they go, well, I'm losing weight and I'm doing whatever I want, why not? And then the issue is long-term results. So, I mean, I knew all along I was to have this second surgery. Okay, so about 9 months later, I had a surgery, and the shorthand for it, because I know that there's a longer version that the surgeons use, but I'm not a surgeon, is called a duodenal switch. So the duodenum is a piece of your intestines, and the switch. So so one of the other common surgeries is called a gastric bypass. So they do the thing to your stomach, and then they kind of reroute some of the plumbing inside of you. That's a technical term. But they reroute a little bit of the plumbing so that you don't quite get as long to digest some of your food as you go through, so you don't absorb quite as much. So if you take that process and you kind of advance it on steroids a little bit, is what you get the duodenal switch. So you have the bit where you can't hold as much in your stomach, and then you get the bit where you can't absorb as much of the things that you actually eat. All right, which causes two things. First of all, it causes rather substantial side effects, because you have to be very mindful of, I'm not going to eat too much fat at the one time, I'm not going to eat too much sugar at one time, I'm going to balance some things out, my meals are going to be balanced, my timing is going to be balanced, I'm going to have my vitamins. Vitamins are critically important. Because you're not absorbing things,
right? That's right, yeah.
But the second part of it is, if you do it right, the duodenal switch leads to a greater percentage of weight loss and a greater retention of the results, so keeping the weight off, for people who started really, really heavy, which is the category I fell into. This is what the surgeon happened to recommend for me, which is why we're talking about that. The surgery I had is not a terribly common surgery. Many more people just have a sleeve or just have a bypass. It's very common. I had this surgery is somewhat less common. I also was a somewhat less common case, because I walked in with really high BMI and it needed to be dealt with. So, so there was that. Now, that's a nice story, okay? And I lost a good deal of weight that way, but that isn't really how I was able to keep the weight off and able to kind of maintain the results that I have.
And how did you, again, this is what's becoming so clear, it's, people do plastic surgery to fix something really quick. And even that has strong implications. But you've done this major surgery, major lifestyle change, emotional journey, seeing a therapist and a nutritionist. So what would you say are the significant things that have had you succeed?
Well, so there's two things. I think the first thing is many people who have a surgery will put some weight on after they do, and they get very discouraged about it. And that makes sense to me. I mean, when I've seen the scale move a couple pounds one way or the other, it's very easy to get into your own head about it. The big thing that the surgeons had, and I would tell anybody who was contemplating it, is that you need to get into the gym. You need to develop an exercise program. I work really hard in the gym. I spend a lot of time in a gym, and it's not, listen, I'm not a gym rat by any stretch of the imagination. I was never like, a power lifter. I was never, like some sort of CrossFit or, like super athletic Olympian guy. That was never, I played football in high school, but like, I was a lineman. I didn't have to move very fast, so it was okay. Well, go to the gym, develop muscle, develop metabolism, food becomes easier to deal with. And muscle and metabolism are what are going to help you keep the weight off. Because if you don't, you end up lighter, but you end up with a lot of extra body fat. I have muscle on me that I never had when I was a teenager even, or in my 20s, because I'm in the gym developing that. And, listen, I have help. I work with a trainer and whatever else, but like, and if people don't have the ability, fine. But like, there's lots of stuff out there. Just go do something. Yeah. Develop an exercise program. But, again, people get into their feelings when they see, I put a couple pounds on, like, what am I going to do? I get it. I've been there. I understand. I completely get it. Which is why the other part of it, I would say, is that this game is mental. This is a mental game. That is what this is. It is a psychological test, because this weight loss thing is a tool, and it's a great tool, and it's a very effective tool, but it's not extremely effective forever. It's effective to a point, but if you don't understand, rationalize, and adapt to your relationship with food, which is how you got into this into the first place. I don't care how small your stomach is. I don't care how little you can absorb. You can figure your way out of it. And that's where my trouble was. Yes. That's why I said to you off the top, people struggle with weight. People sit there and go, geez, I used to fit into this size and I'm up a size. And I cry for those people, like a little bit of sarcasm here, but like I didn't get to 502 pounds because I had a little extra food at McDonald's. I had it because, that food was a comfort mechanism for everything.
Yes. I'm going to interrupt you here because we're running out of time, and I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you, but it occurs to me a similar thing is people who win the lottery, if they don't change the way they think about money, very often the story is that they go through the money very quickly. So again, it's an inside game, and shifting your relationship to money, shifting your relationship to food, shifting your relationship to yourself. The one question I asked you before the show is, did you have to have surgery to remove all the excess skin, fat, whatever? And you said, no, you don't have to have surgery, and it's a potential thing, but you showed me what you do to help you kind of feel comfortable in your own skin. Are you willing to show that to us?
Certainly, and the lottery thing, I had never heard that done that way, and I actually think that's really interesting. I agree with you, and I think it's really interesting. It's a nice point. So the question you would ask me was about plastics. Have you gotten? Are you And the answer is no. I haven't gotten. Am I thinking about it? You think about it, but plastic surgery is expensive. It is almost never covered by insurance. It is
major surgery.
It's painful. it requires a fair amount of recovery time. I mean, it's the sort of thing where if you can do it and you want to do it, fine, and if not, okay. But the question comes up when you have somebody who's lost more than half their body weight. It's a fair question, fine, no problem. And so I have not to this point done so. I've thought about it, but what I've said is, I'm going to spare everybody the indignity of looking at me with loose skin, but it's there. I assure you it's there, right? But there needs to be a way to kind of keep that under control, and it turns out that if you can kind of control that, it makes clothes fit better. This shirt I bought at a department store, and you buy it off the rack and it's a beautiful thing. My gosh, it's a beautiful thing. But being able to buy a shirt like this without a bunch of extra skin, it makes the shirt fit better because it fits the way shirts are conventionally supposed to fit. I don't have to buy a size up for down here and then I'm swimming in it up here, things of that nature. So it might be better if I stand to show what it is that I'm doing. But so the underneath here, I have this, you'll excuse the microphone, but this is like a compression garment. And again, the brand is not sponsoring me, so I'm not going to talk about it. But
we as women understand compression garments.
I assure you that many women have some experience with the phenomenon. But the idea is that it's not performing radically miraculous things on me, but it does have a tendency to keep me from kind of wiggling all about. And it makes me feel more comfortable knowing kind of where my body is. It gives me a little more spatial awareness in my body. And, they make them upper and lower, and it turns out I really kind of do fine with the shirt. Not that long ago, I was wearing I was wearing white pants, which I'm not in the habit of wearing white pants, but I was wearing white pants someplace, and they were jeans and they were a little on the tight side, and so you have a downstairs kind of garment that'll work for that sort of thing, and so I felt like 5 pounds of sausage in a 4-pound case, but I looked fantastic, and that's just kind of how that works sometimes. It's just fine.
Carl, we're actually at the end of our time. I so appreciate you coming here and sharing all of this, being open and authentic, because I think it's so helpful for people out there who are struggling with decision making, and also to talk about the fullness or the richness of the journey, not just as one thing, but covering, the psychological, emotional, physical aspects of all of this.
And I would just ask, please, anybody that sees this or anybody that wants to ask, to the extent that my contact information or they can get a hold of you and get through me, I like nothing better than to talk to people about this process and about what helps people succeed and what is the challenge for people, because ultimately this changed my life, and I think there's a reasonable argument that it's saved, has added many quality years to my life. And
I think that's very generous.
If there's any chance that I could offer that to somebody else, I would like nothing better.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Of course, no problem.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.